My name is Natalia Lassalle-Morillo. I'm a visual artist who works in film, theater, and installation. My practice is a research-based practice that I usually carry out in collaboration with others. Sometimes it's artists, sometimes it's human beings that I say are artists in their own right, but perhaps didn't go to art school. Other times it's researchers and scientists. And my work is interested in really thinking about memory and history in the context of the Caribbean, and thinking of how the imperial and colonial interventions in the Caribbean has affected the ways that we remember. The research that we were doing at the Smithsonian that made it into the project that is being presented at Triennial, I was working with these Puerto Rican indigenous objects that were excavated from Puerto Rico after the Spanish-American War. The Smithsonian sent an archaeologist called Jesse Walter Fuchs to Puerto Rico to collect indigenous patrimony from its new possession, from the new US possession. And Sofia was looking at a collection called the Teodoro Vidal collection. Teodoro Vidal was a Puerto Rican aristocrat, but in a way also a self-taught historian and folklorist who started collecting folk art and popular art in a way because he was fearing the disappearance of these practices in Puerto Rico. And his intention was to create a museum in Puerto Rico where all of these objects could be housed. But for many reasons, that wasn't possible. And he ended up donating 3,000 objects to the Smithsonian in the 90s, which I think is one of the biggest accessions that the Smithsonian has ever had. So our project is really thinking about the histories of these collections, thinking about how these objects are housed in the Smithsonian and how they live in the Smithsonian, but also tracing these objects back to their places of origin and to the people who they actually belong to, you know, and thinking too how in Puerto Rico, the relationship that Puerto Rico has to the United States, but also the relationship that Puerto Rico has to repatriation and this new ethical returns policy that was established in the Smithsonian really put us to really question and think of ways of how our project and our work can also facilitate or mediate forms of return that are not only physically returning these objects, but returning these stories and connecting the practices with people in Puerto Rico who are still developing the practices of the people who originally made these objects.